Coming up, the Predators and Panthers keep their wild card hopes alive. This is Locked On Game to Game NHL.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NHL. Local experts join us to go over the biggest stories on the ice and recap all of the action for you from last night in the NHL. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. The Predators still have their playoff hopes alive at this point. They got an overtime win over the Golden Knights on Tuesday. Locked On Predators and Locked On Golden Knights are in to go over that final.
An exciting game at Bridgestone Arena ends with the Nashville Predators beating the Vegas Golden Knights 3-2 in overtime, and in the process, keeping the playoff hopes alive. Nick Morgan here from the Locked On Predators podcast. This game followed the script of pretty much every Predators game for the past couple of weeks. Preds jump out to a hot start. 2 goals from Tommy Novak, who, since he's been called up, is the Preds' leading scorer. Hard to imagine that. And then the Predators just kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit, let Vegas back into it. 2 goals from Alex Pietrangelo. The Preds had to survive some hairy situations in the third period, a couple of questionable refereeing decisions, and then just a big onslaught from the Golden Knights, who looked primed to steal that extra point. And then in overtime, Cody Glass, with a great redirection shot that got past Jonathan Quick, gave the Preds the win. Predators are still in it, folks. It's going to be interesting to see if they can carry this momentum to a surprise playoff berth.
What's up, everybody? Chris Golick, Locked On Vegas Golden Knights here. The Golden Knights fall 3-2 in overtime to the Nashville Preds. VGK was down most of this game. They were able to bring it back to level after being down 2-0. Unfortunately, VGK could not convert on a couple of power plays, including a 5-on-3 advantage, which ultimately led to Nashville being able to get the extra point in overtime. All in all, things are still going well for the Vegas Golden Knights, who got 3 points in back-to-back games and 5 points in their last 3 games in 4 nights. No reason to get that upset, Vegas Golden Knights fans. Folks, for everything Vegas Golden Knights hockey, please check out the Locked On Vegas Golden Knights podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Your team every day.
The Panthers have certainly not heard the bell, willing themselves into the wild card picture with some late season heroics. Locked On Panthers thrilled with how the team is trending at just the right time.
The Florida Panthers in game number 78 not only win in regulation, but their win puts them in the 7th spot in the Eastern Conference. What is up, guys? It's Armando Velez from the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, and the Florida Panthers defeat the Buffalo Sabres by a final score of 2-1 in Sunrise, Florida. And the Florida Panthers, they had a few scares early where they gave up a goal against the Sabres, but it was called back due to offside, and then giving up a goal on the power play. But the Panthers did not give up. They still stood strong. They won their board battles, won their faceoffs, eliminated rush chances, consistently was able to clear their own zone around Alex Lyon, and the man himself, Alex Lyon, going 39 of 40. It's been 9 periods for the Panthers since they've given up a goal at even strength. So Alex Lyon, a big reason for the Florida Panthers and how they performed lately. From going for their season-long 4-game losing streak to now a season-long 4-game winning streak. My goodness, what a turnaround for the Florida Panthers in the last week for them. Matthew Tkachuk is now 1 goal away from 40 goals on the season for the Panthers, and Aaron Ekblad gets the scoring going on the power play for the Panthers to tie the game at 1 in the middle of the first period after giving up the first goal for the Panthers. To listen to my recap of this 2-1 win over the Buffalo Sabres and being back in a playoff spot, make sure to listen to the next episode of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Your team every day.
The Avalanche have clinched their spot in the postseason with an overtime victory over San Jose. Locked On Sharks is in to go over a heartbreaking loss for them.
The Sharks drop a heartbreaker in overtime. I'm JD Young of Locked On Sharks, and after being down 2-0 early in the first and then 3-1, the Sharks crawl back and tied up because of Kevin LeBank's 2 goals. But overtime, the Colorado Avalanche do what they do best. Nathan MacKinnon scores the game winner on a breakaway. This game, you saw a lot of these young pieces for the Sharks really contribute in this game. Thomas Borlo had a good game. Daniel Gushin showing why he might become a special player for the Sharks. And Kaapo Kähkönen stood on his head all night long. This could have easily been a 5, 6, 7 goal game for the Avs. But the Sharks just ran out of gas at the end of the game, and a costly turnover by Erik Karlsson, who scored his 96th point on the season, led to the Avs win. So we'll full breakdown of this game on your next episode of Locked On Sharks, wherever you get podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well.
The Penguins lose ground in the East wildcard after a loss to New Jersey. Locked On Devils goes over their win and playoff positioning.
What's up? This is Trey Matthews of Locked On Devils, and here is my post-game reaction. So, for the first time since the 2009-2010 season, the New Jersey Devils have swept the season series against the Pittsburgh Penguins. They absolutely dominated them in this game from start to finish by thrashing them by a score of 5-1. It was a big game for Dawson Mercer, as Mercer was able to pick up his first career hat trick, and he accredited 3 of the 5 goals scored by the New Jersey Devils. It was the type of game that the Devils needed because they got embarrassed in their previous matchup against the Winnipeg Jets. Now they're back to their winning ways, and hopefully they can move forward from this great outing against one of their Metropolitan Division rivals. Vitek Vanecek was strong in between the pipes, and he has redeemed himself as well. Dougie Hamilton was able to score, and it seems like the pairing of Dougie Hamilton and Kevin Ball is working out so far for Lindy Ruff. So there are 4 games remaining in the regular season for the Devils, and now they have their eyes set on the playoffs. And these types of games, they could be big momentum boosters for them.
Coming up, the Canucks and Blue Jackets continue to help their draft positioning. This is Locked On Game to Game NHL. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NHL playoffs are right around the corner. It's the perfect time for you to download that app because new customers get a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It is safe, secure, super easy for you to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to goals that are scored in the game. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Welcome back. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NHL. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you again for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. The Kraken got a win over Vancouver as their playoff hopes are looking pretty good in the West. Wildcard standings, Locked On Canucks is looking on the positive side.
Play the kids? Check. Pettersson marches towards 40 goals and 100 points? Check. Lose the game? Check. Hey, if only the Canucks can make it exciting, though, because that was a bit of a snooze fest. The Canucks lost 5-2 to the Seattle Kraken. I'm Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks. And the Canucks actually jumped out to a 2-0 lead in this one. Anthony Beauvillier scored on a beautiful setup from Connor Garland. And that was preceded by, Elias Pettersson scoring his 38th goal of the season. But from there, it was not all downhill. Not only did the Canucks give up 5 unanswered goals, they barely got any shots on net. It was, a snooze fest. Kyle and I, we probably won't touch on this game, but we'll talk about something else Canucks related that's a little bit more interesting on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Canucks.
Philly falls to the Blues 4-2 last night. Locked On Flyers joins us now with more.
Russ Cohen here for the Locked On Flyers podcast. The St. Louis Blues beat the Flyers 4-2. Flyers fought back a little bit, but they were down 3-0 after 2. Again, just one of these games, they were just, a step slow, just not really there. Rocky Thompson does the coaching. The power play is still the same with him, 0-for-3. Didn't change much. Not much changed in this one. JVR, Morgan Frost get the goals. Good for Morgan Frost. He's really putting together a nice end of the season here. Ronnie Adler got called up. He's noticeable in some spots, but they had the 11-7 going. That's really it. Listen to the podcast.
Again, looking on the bright side, Columbus sees a spectacular NHL debut from a rookie, and also they improved their draft positioning at the same time. Locked On Blue Jackets with more on Jet Greaves.
Jet Greaves made 46 of 49 saves in his NHL debut, and the Blue Jackets could not get the win for him. Jay Foster, Locked On Blue Jackets here, and Jet Greaves is the only thing we're talking about right now. The 22-year-old Ontario native made his NHL debut tonight. Like I said, 46 of 49 saves. The Blue Jackets, I think, had like 25 shots total, and somehow they could not pull off a win for this goalie. Super disappointing. Like, great for the tank, I guess, but I really wanted this for Jet Greaves. I think he's been a real great story for this team over the past couple of seasons, kind of coming out of nowhere, undrafted, played 4 years in the OHL. They sign him basically because they don't have a choice to sign anyone else. And here he is making his NHL debut. Didn't get the win. Super, super proud of Jet. We're going to talk about him in tomorrow's Locked On Blue Jackets.
The Blackhawks get a rare win, stopping a losing skid as they top the Calgary Flames. Locked On Blackhawks is in to go over the victory.
Chicago Blackhawks see their losing streak come to an end as they sweep the Calgary Flames of the season series. What's up, everyone? This is Jack Bushman. Tonight, the Blackhawks snapped their 8-game losing skid with a 4-3 win over the Calgary Flames. They received some phenomenal goaltending from Peter Mrazek, got some timely goal scoring in the third period. Lucas Reichel and Andreas Athanasiou hooked up for the second time. And then shout out to Austin Wagner for potting his first goal with the Hawks for the GWG. The bad news is the Hawks, with the win, move into third to last place in the NHL standings. They're behind the Anaheim Ducks and the Columbus Blue Jackets due to the tiebreaker. So kind of a costly victory for the Blackhawks over the Flames. For more coverage on this win by the Hawks, be sure to check out tomorrow's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's a wrap for this edition of Locked On Game to Game NHL. Thank you again for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. With the playoffs approaching, make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NHL and your favorite team's podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.